How did the economy work before money existed? Imagine waking up in a world where money does not exist. No coins, no paper, no numbers on a screen. Yet, in this world, people trade, empires rise, wars are fought, cities grow, and wealth decides who survives. So, how did the economy work before money ever existed? The answer is uncomfortable because it reveals something startling about our world today. Money was never the beginning, it was the result. Long before the first coin was struck, human beings were already economic creatures. They hunted, they gathered, they stored, they protected, and most importantly, they exchanged. In the earliest societies, there was no concept of price, only value. Food was not bought, it was shared or withheld. Tools were not sold, they were earned through trust, skill, or loyalty. The economy was not a system, it was a relationship. Picture a small settlement thousands of years ago. Everyone knows everyone. There are no strangers, only memory. Who helped last winter? Who refused? Who owes whom? Exchange worked through obligation. If you hunted, you shared. If you built, you were protected. If you failed, you remembered. Nothing was written down, nothing was counted, but everything was tracked by people. This wasn't a primitive economy, it was a fragile one. Because memory can fail and trust can break. As communities grew larger, this system began to collapse. You can't remember the debts of 1,000 people. You can't track favors across generations. You can't enforce fairness without structure. So, societies adapted. They didn't invent money. They invented measurement, grain, cattle, salt, shells, objects that could be counted, stored, and divided. Not to buy things, but to measure obligation. If you owed grain, you owed time, labor, or protection. Value was no longer emotional, it became abstract. This was the first great shift from human memory to symbolic value. But abstraction has consequences. Once value can be measured, it can be accumulated. Some people began to store more than they needed, not for survival, but for power. Control over food meant control over people. If you controlled the surplus, you controlled who ate, who worked, and who starved. The economy became political. Leadership was no longer about wisdom. It was about storage. The first elites weren't kings. They were storekeepers. As surplus grew, so did conflict. Not over belief, not over honor, but over resources. Land that produced more, routes that moved goods, ports that connected distant regions. Trade was no longer local, it became strategic. And strategy demands protection. This is where economy and war merged. The first wars were not ideological, they were logistical. Who controls the grain controls the army. Who controls the routes controls the future. Without money, payment was made in access. Access to land, access to protection, access to survival. If you could not pay, you worked. If you could not work, you belonged. Debt was not financial, it was personal, and often it was permanent. This is where freedom began to disappear. As societies expanded, trust between strangers became impossible. You cannot trade on memory with someone you will never see again, so value needed neutrality. Something that didn't depend on relationships, reputation, or emotion. Money wasn't created to make trade easier. It was created to remove humanity from exchange. Coins replaced trust, numbers replaced memory. And violence enforced value. Before money, authority decided worth. After money, the system did, but the illusion of fairness hid a deeper truth. Money did not erase inequality, it standardized it. The powerful still controlled production, the weak still depended on access. Only now, it looked neutral. So, how did the economy work before money existed? It worked because people remembered, because obligation was visible, because power was personal, and it failed for the exact same reasons. Memory breaks, trust erodes, power concentrates. Money did not fix these problems. It only scaled them. The ancient world didn't disappear. It evolved. Debt still binds us, resources still decide power. Trade still fuels conflict, only the symbols changed. We no longer trade grain, we trade numbers. We no longer store food, we store data, but the fundamental structure is the same. The question isn't how the economy worked before money existed. The real question is, has it really changed at all?